Welcome, and thank you for listening to this episode of Leaps and Bounds. I'm your host, Tom Bash, and I'm thrilled to be bringing you conversations with some of the most successful CEOs, sales leaders, and home improvement professionals. When I started in this industry 20 years ago, tearing off roofs, I had no idea about what went into making a home improvement business successful. Now, having met with thousands of contractors, helping them adopt technology, and watching them grow, I'm excited to invite them on to share what's made them successful, what they're doing today to stay ahead of their competition, and the advice they have for others. On this episode, I'm joined by Steve Stencil, CTO of Leap. As the top sales rep at New Look Home Design, Steve knew there had to be a better way to sell than carrying around briefcases full of brochures, standing outside like a scarecrow, holding up multiple sample boards, and wasting time creating an estimate. Thus, Leap was born. Let's dive in and get the full story. Steve, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, I know you're the CTO at Leap, and we'll get to more of that later. But I want to go back about 20 years and find out how we got here. So
wow,
I think
it seems so long.
Yeah, tell me about it, right? I age myself when I say that.
Right.
I think you and I are both members of the high school class of 2002.
Yep.
And you know something else that's funny is we're both Best Buy alum.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Actually, 20 years ago, it was funny. They had Netflix was out, and I was working in like the DVD music section or whatever. And at that time, Netflix was like a mail-in DVD thing.
Yep,
So they
I
mail
remember.
you. Yeah.
I remember.
And it was like, you know, and I'm like, I got to sell this. You know, what is this stuff?
Yep. I remember I was like, who would order DVDs? When I
Yeah.
want to watch a movie, I want to go get it that night.
Yeah.
You know, Blockbuster was the thing.
Yeah,
So,
because they'd have to mail it to you, and then when you're done with it, you mail it back to them.
Right.
And, you know, look where we are now.
Yeah, I remember they were little red. They looked like movie tickets.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what you would sign up. That's awesome.
Yeah, so like that was one of the things like we were trying to sell, you know, and it was like nobody's going to buy this
Right.
thing, and now look where
Look
it's
at
at
it.
today.
It's crazy.
Crazy. But anyways, I want to go back to, you know, Best Buy, I think was like one of your first sales jobs, right? Where you kind of...
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I hated school,
Yeah.
and I wanted to get out early.
Yeah.
And I found out that there was a work study program. There's two ways to get out early. You could do a work study program, or you could do a college program. I knew I wasn't going to go to college,
Right.
so I went the work study route. And one of the paths that you could take was going through computers. So like you could do a computer class. I think it was like building websites and learning. You had to do keyboarding first,
Yep.
then you would go to websites, blah, blah, blah. And it says, okay, in your 11th and 12th grade year, it's the second half of 11th grade and all of 12th grade, if you get a job working with computers, then you can get out half day. So I was like, oh, sign me up. And I my favorite store at the time was Best Buy.
Yeah.
So I had a buddy that was working there, and it was just natural. I was in there, every week buying a CD or whatever it was. And I got a job application. It says, hey, I'd like to get a job here working with computers. So that way I can take it back to my guidance counselor and say, hey, here's my job with computers. I want to get out early. And that was my first sales job, selling computers.
Yeah. Do you remember like LimeWire and those things? You're talking about buying
Of course.
CDs, but that was like the
Yeah.
Napster days.
Napster, yeah, I had Napster,
Yeah.
LimeWire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It made it hard to sell CDs because everybody was just, pirating them.
Yeah, but there was just that thing, like when a new CD came out, you got it, and then like sometimes the lyrics were in the
Yeah.
cover, you'd open it up. So,
Right.
I like that part of
We're
it.
dating ourselves again. Yeah.
Right? Yes, it's crazy. It seems so short, but
Yeah.
then you say 20 years at the beginning of this. I'm like, oh my god, I feel
Yeah.
so old.
Yeah.
Ugh.
No, that's great. So then I imagine then, you were successful there at Best Buy.
Yeah, so here I'll tell you the story of
Yeah.
how, kind of like what brought me here, right? So I started working at Best Buy, and that's actually where I met my best friend at to this day. He was best man at my wedding. He was my supervisor, and we developed a sales process, or he developed it. I don't know where it came from, but it was a sales process that took our store from like one of the lowest ranked, it was in Glen Burnie, Maryland, and we were one of the lowest ranked in the country to one of the highest ranked. I think we were like in the top 5% or something like that. And basically all we were doing is we called it solution selling, which was selling just
Yeah.
a whole package. So a customer would come in for a computer, but we would sell them the computer, the printer, the cable, the ink, the warranty, the briefcase, everything that went along with the computer. And that's where, they make all their money at, is the warranties and the
Right.
accessories that go along with
That's why
it.
I never buy one.
Right. Yeah, me either. So it was crazy. We would get employee discounts, and I remember the warranties on them things. Let's say a $200 warranty. When I would get the employee discount, it was $8.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I would buy it then, but yeah, never today. But anyway, So I was making minimum wage selling computers, and I was very good at it. I just had this natural.
Because it wasn't commission then, right?
No, zero commission. Yeah. Zero commission. I had no idea really what I was doing or how good I was at it. Right. And I had I found myself actually demoing people from corporate where they like flew in. I don't know where they're based out of. But I remember they flew in, and it was like this big ordeal. And I was the best sales rep in the department. And I remember demoing computers and the way that we sold them and the solution selling and how I was doing on the clipboard. And we had what's called says and do's, like things you say and do. And I was like demoing corporate because they wanted to know how our store went from one of the lowest ranked to one of the highest ranked in a matter of a year.
So it wasn't Best Buy's sales strategy. That was something uniquely developed.
Correct. Yeah, that was something that we did. I think my buddy Josh, I'll give him credit for that. He put these every Sunday morning. He would come in. We would get the circular, the ad.
Yeah.
And he would come in and look what was in the ad, and he'd build the packages, based on what things that we're going to put in it. And then a customer would come in for, say, a $600 desktop, and they'd walk out buying a $1,200 desktop with all the accessories and battery backups and everything that went along with it. So I did that for a couple years. And I remember I got a phone call one day at Best Buy, and there was this guy, Mark, and he says, "Hey, Steve, this is Mark. You don't know me, but I know you." He's like, "I've heard of you through the grapevine. He used to work at Best Buy."
Well, word travels fast.
Yeah. And he's like, "I heard of you, and I heard you're pretty good at what you do, and I work over here at CompUSA as a sales manager, and I'd like you to be part of our team, and you make a hell of a lot more money than you're making now." And I was like, he's like, "Just come down and have lunch with me." And it was actually in Columbia, where we're at now, Columbia, Maryland. And I was like, "All right, I'll come have lunch with you. I'm all about making more money." And I went down and I had lunch with him, and he just explained to me, how it worked and how commission worked. At that point, I didn't know anything how commission worked. And he's like, you basically do the same thing you're doing now, selling the same products you're doing now. You can do it the same way you're doing now, and you can just make triple of what you're making now. And I was like, okay.
Sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up. So then I left Best Buy, and I went there working at CompUSA, and that was my first commission job. And to this day, I'd never worked on anything but commission. Yeah. Like I couldn't imagine it because, I had an ability to sell. So I was working there, and then actually my buddy Josh ended up going to work at CompUSA as well. He was a sales manager, I think at one point a store manager. Mm-hmm. So then I worked there for a little bit. I remember my buddy Josh, he was a store manager because he got the store in Fairfax, Virginia. It was supposed to be temporary. So he's like, "Hey, man, I want you to come down and work with me in this store. We're going to take this thing from the bottom to the top like we did at Best Buy and blah, blah, blah. And it's only temporary because it was like an hour, with traffic, sometimes 2-hour drive one way." So I was like, "All right, I'll do it. Like we'll do it." And so we went down there, and I ended up working there, I think, a little over 2 years. Wow. And then, the drive was just too much. There was times I remember getting home, it was just so late. I spent more time driving than I did working. So I remember there was another buddy that I worked with at Best Buy that I was still in contact with who had went to Radio Shack. Yeah. Selling cell phones.
Right.
And he was telling me, "Hey, man, you're selling all those computers." He's like, "There's no profit margin in computers." He's like, "There's a lot of profit margin in cell phones. You should come to Radio Shack."
Were you selling BlackBerries?
No, I
Razors?
didn't sell. So when I started working at Radio Shack, there was they had tried the smartphone thing, you had the Palm PDAs and stuff like that were like phones. And supposedly Radio Shack lost about a bunch of money on it because nobody bought them. So it was before the iPhone, but after they tried a smartphone approach. Okay. So this was when the Razor phone was really popular. Yeah. So I went to Radio Shack, and it was right around the corner from my house. It was an easy commute. I mean, I could ride a skateboard there. Right. And so I started selling cell phones, and I mean, that was great. It was very easy because I could sell a free cell phone. You sign up for a 1 or 2 year contract, and then they gave you the customer the phone for free. And then you would sell text messaging you get for 1 month free, but I would get a $5 spiff for selling you text messaging. Sure. So I would sign you up for a cell phone and make $30, $40, for one phone, and then you'd have a family plan come in with 5 phones, right? And it was decent money. So I worked there for a while. And then my best friend, again, he keeps coming into the story. My best friend had started a home improvement company selling fences and decks with his father-in-law. Yep. So his father-in-law had installed, just to this day, installs fences and decks. He's done it all his life for all I know. And so Josh was like, "Hey, I'm good at sales. I could sell these fences and decks, and you can install them." And he went in business with his father-in-law. So again, he contacted me and said, "Hey, Steve, come sell these fences and decks for me. you can make a lot more money doing home improvement sales. And so this was my introduction to home improvement. So I started going online.
So this is how you got stuck.
Yeah, right. That's how I got stuck. So I went online, and I'm doing a little bit of research. And I remember the amount of money that they said you can make as a sales rep in home improvement. So I was like, that's unimaginable.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that you can make a really good living doing it. Yeah.
I was like, it was life-changing. I remember telling my wife, I was like, man, if what they say is true, I was like, this is life-changing.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing they don't teach you that in school, though. You don't ever really learn much about sales.
No,
in school. Although you can make a lot of money. You do make a lot of money in sales.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the numbers I see people make, I'm like, it's crazy. It's like doctor and lawyer money.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. So yeah, the funny part about this is my buddy said, okay, come work for me. I'll train you how to do all the stuff, whatever. He's like, the only thing is you have to pass a test. So in the state of Maryland, we have what's called the Maryland Home Improvement Commission.
Yeah, I watched Tin Men.
Yeah. So the Maryland Home Improvement Commission requires you to not only have a license to be a contractor, but you also have to have a license to be a sales rep. So I used to always complain, like, you have to pay a fee and take a test and renew that license every 2 years to go give people free estimates. So it's crazy.
It is.
But so he's like, he had just started his company. He just went through the whole thing to pass his contractor license. And he was like, you have to get this license before you can come sell. So I was like, okay, I'll go get the license. I signed up for the test. He gave me the book. I went down. There was an open book test. And I took the test.
So no problem, right?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll pass this thing easy. Yeah. I failed it.
Yeah.
So I remember I was like, man, I couldn't believe it. I later found out that the book that he gave me was the contractor book that did have the information in it that I needed. But it was mainly the book. All the information in it was mainly to get your contractor's license. The sales license book was 1/10 the size. Yeah. So
they just see you during their flipping page.
Yeah, I'm like, I was confused because, like, I mean,
Right.
I was like, I'll pass this thing, no problem.
Sure.
And, he's like, hey, it's in there. There's 20, 30 questions, whatever. I was like, it can't be that hard.
Yeah.
But I guess it was. And I failed it. And I went back to him. I'm like, look, man, I'm going to have to stay at Radio Shack for a little bit. I don't, whatever. So, but I couldn't give up the fact of the amount of money that you could make in home improvement. So I kept looking online, and I found this company who was hiring home improvements in my area called New Look Home Design. And I applied on them, and actually I found them on Craigslist at the time. I mean, this was a while ago, 2009, I think this was. I found them on Craigslist, and then I was on like Monster Jobs, and I found them there, and I'm like, man, this company keeps coming up. I'm going to give them a shot, and see what they say. And my goal was to go work for a different company, maybe get an entry-level position, learn the ropes, a little bit, understand how the home improvement thing works, then go take the test and go work for my buddy. So I just wanted a little bit of experience under my belt.
Gotcha.
Also, because my buddy was just starting out his business, I'm like, man, I'm good at selling electronics, but I don't know how I would be in someone's house, selling a ticket that is 10 times higher than what I'm used to selling.
Right. Now, did you know what the ticket sizes were higher in home
No, I didn't put all that together at that time,
Yeah.
but I did, he was starting his business, and I'm like, I think I will be good, but
Right.
I'm not 100%, and I don't want, his business to fail as a result of me not being able to sell.
Yeah.
So I applied at New Look, to kind of learn the ropes. And what I later found out was you were allowed, I think it's up to 90 days or something. I don't know the exact number, but I could work under their salesman license, like the company's license, for a period of time while I was learning until I went and got my own. So they hired me on and trained me. I remember initially they trained me on Windows. And I still remember my interview. I went in, and there was this guy, Rich, who was the sales manager at the time. And at the time, I was super... I was a lot lighter than what I am now, so I look super young. I think I was in my early 20s, but I looked like I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Tom, which is one of the owners of the company, he always makes fun of me. He says, Steve came in with his grandfather's suit. It didn't even fit him, because I was like dressed up.
Yeah.
I remember I had to go. I got a tie and a shirt,
Yeah.
A button-up shirt, because I always wore polos to work. So I went in there trying to look nice. And Rich did the whole sell me a pencil thing, which was kind of new to me, even though I was in sales at retail, but they never told me to sell him a pencil.
Yeah, right.
And he was like, hey, sell me this pencil. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, here, sign your name.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, that's pretty good. I was like, okay, well, you need a pencil. I got one. I happen to have one. So,
that's better than opposed to saying, look at this eraser and this pencil's shiny.
Right. I was like, hey, I need you to sign your name on this paper. He's like, I don't have a pencil. I was like, well, it just so happens I have one. Whatever. So it worked out. And so he said he wanted to bring me in for a second interview with Patrick, which was the one who did all the interviews for like the sales guys.
Right.
But at the time, Patrick was on vacation. So he got with Tom, which is the other owner, And Tom does more like the production and operation side. And he set me up an interview with Tom. And I remember Rich was like, hey, you can make $100,000 a year, you know, in doing in-home sales. I'm like, I remember going home and telling my wife, I was like, they said you can make $100,000. Could you imagine making $100,000? Yeah. That's crazy. And so I was really excited about this job. And this was actually in 2009, so it was right after like the economy tanked.
Oh yeah.
Right? I couldn't find a job if I wanted to for more than $10, $12 an hour. And so my wife actually created me a pitch book. She said, here, I'm going to put this together, which was all my awards that I had gotten from Best Buy.
There you go.
All of my, Salesman of the Month from like CompUSA.
Yep.
I had a ton of things from Radio Shack that we put in there. We had little plaques that we like photocopied. Nice. And I basically made it, or my wife made it. I gave her credit. We still have the pitch book. And it was a 3-ring binder, just a bunch of pictures of awards that I had gotten for sales. And when I went in for my second interview, I basically, Tom was like, one of the questions, I think something along the lines of, why should we hire you? And I says, well, here, let me show you. And I started flipping through my pitch book. I was like, I was salesman of the month this month, and the following. And I got second on this month, but I got it the next one. And I kept flipping through the book and showing them all the awards and certificates and how, I was just always ranked the highest at every sales position I was at. And I said, as a matter of fact, I was like, I'm not sure. I've never done home improvement sales. I was like, but I'll go on a limb and say if I'm not number one within 90 days, I was like, I will probably leave because I won't be good enough.
It's pretty brave.
Yeah.
Brave.
So, and that, I was very confident in the interview because I told my wife, I was like, either I'm going to be the best or I will not be able to do it. I was like, there will be no in between with me. And so I got the job. And I remember I went into training. Training was like 2 weeks, and I was learning Windows, and it was like redundant to me. I was basically just tell me about the product knowledge.
Right.
And I wanted to use what I learned at Best Buy. To this day, it's the best sales training I've ever received was at Best Buy, where they just taught me about Says and do's and how to overcome objections and, just identifying the customer's needs and then solution selling instead of what I call feature selling or what they called feature selling. Yeah. It's like this thing does a bunch of things, and here's a list of all the things that it do. But if you can't relate that to a problem that it solves for the customer, then it doesn't really land on that customer.
Yeah. There's a really good book I've read called Gap Selling.
Yeah.
By Keenan. He talks about, present state, future state, and filling that gap.
Yeah.
And it's a really important thing for sales reps and salespeople to be successful is to understand that and not lean on like the features of a product.
Exactly. Yep. So I took that knowledge and I still remember my first lead. It was a window lead. It was a rental property, which if anybody on here is selling home improvements, they know how hard it is to sell a rental property on a one-call close. Yeah. So the company I worked for was a canvassing company. So they would go around knocking on doors. A lot of times they would set up same-day leads where I would have to go out that day and sell it. And I remember this one was a rental property. And I don't think it was the same day, but I still remember the lead like it was yesterday. And I went out there and it was for 4 windows. The guy just wanted the 4 windows on the front of the house replaced because the tenant was complaining about the windows. Okay. And it wasn't the guy's house. He was very awkward sitting in the house because it wasn't his furniture or anything. Right. So he was trying to get me out there super quick, but I sold.
Probably just wanted the lowest price too.
He wanted the lowest price,
cheapest grade, lowest price.
So I was like overcoming them, and again, this is my first one. They don't teach you in training how to overcome objections on a rental property. So I was just telling them, hey, with this and the resale value, and I was like just trying everything that I can to get this guy to buy, and I ended up selling him the whole house of windows. So he wanted just the 4 in the front. Yeah. I ended up selling the whole house of windows. The guy ended up canceling. So he did end up canceling the contract. Dun, dun, dun. But it was a win for me. It was a win because I got to turn that in. I was like, hey, here's my first lead. I can do it. Yeah. If I can sell this, then I gave
you the confidence that you needed. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I remember I ran my second lead. I still remember that lead. It's not worth talking about, but I didn't sell it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good lead. And then my third lead I ran, I still remember that one. And this was a lady that would not allow me in her house. So she had a little bench outside in her garden. And it was for a whole house, 4 windows, but her husband didn't want anything to do with the appointment and said that he was not buying windows. So he wouldn't let a sales rep into the house. The wife wanted windows, so she sat out on a park bench. But I gave it 100%. I remember I'm sitting there for 3 hours. It's dark out. I'm swatting mosquitoes off of my arms trying to pitch this lady using a flashlight, to show her some of the things. And I signed it up with $16,000. And it went through. And I remember I had to go back the next day to get the financing paperwork signed. And I finally got to meet the husband. And got him on board. I was like, hey, look, here it is. She had already gotten him on board, but he had to sign the paperwork. And that deal went through. And then it was kind of off to the races, right out of the gate. I remember there was this guy they had this hierarchy of senior reps and junior reps, right? Senior reps, they got a little bit of extra commission. I think they were there longer. They've proven themselves. They got all the good leads, and they had the senior reps and junior reps. And my first full month, I remember I did $60K in revenue, which at the time, I mean, that was a lot. The company wasn't that big.
Sure.
Matter of fact, 100K was like a milestone. You got your name on the wall if you did 100K.
Yeah.
And I think at the time it had only been hit 4 times. Like it had only been achieved 4 times. So I did $60K my first month, which was a very solid month. I think the bonus at that time was $30K. If you had $30K, you were in bonus territory.
There you go.
Yeah. So I did 60, and I remember there was a senior rep that said to me, I told him he did 80 that month. And I says, oh man, I was like, almost had you. He had a $30,000 sale come in the last day of the month. That was a B back.
So you almost beat him.
Yes,
Yeah.
He beat me the last day of the month with a B back.
Yeah.
And I said to him, went up to him, I was like, hey man, I was like, you had a hell of a month, great job on the end. I was like, I almost had you. And he just looked at me like real cocky, and he's like, I would never let a junior rep beat me. And like that was like I was like so excited, like I had a great month, he had a great month, like I was just getting a decent paycheck, and he made that comment, and it just lit a fire under me.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to smash him.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, the fact that like you referenced a little bit earlier in that story that you sold that lead to that lady who wouldn't let you in the house,
Mm-hmm.
or her husband wouldn't let you in the house. I think a lot of sales reps, just would no show that lead, or they wouldn't put a full effort into it. So I think that definitely helps to make you successful. It's give everything, even on those leads where you don't think you have a chance.
Yep.
You just never know.
Right. So my philosophy on those was, there were times that you get discouraged, right? You get the lead where the customers just, don't want you in the house, and it's not going to be a sale.
Right.
But I always called it like Groundhog Day for me. So I always try to erase my memory of what happened on the last lead and go to the next lead with a complete open mind, because sales reps, it gets in their head. I've seen so many very talented reps where, the last sale or last couple leads that they ran just wasn't that good. And, mentally they just get drained. They go to their next lead, and it, they pitch miss it because it's all in their head. So mine was like Groundhog Day. Every day I'm like, okay, it's going to be good. And I always said, I'm going to pitch miss. I'm not going to sell 100% of the leads that I don't pitch.
Yeah.
So if I pitch that lead of the lady that won't let me in her house and just give it a shot, even if it's a 1% chance, it's still more than 0.
Yeah, right.
So, and most of the time you won't sell that lead, but, sometimes you will.
Yeah.
So anyway, I with that guy who said that he would never let a junior rep beat me, the next month I doubled his revenue. So I think I did like 120K and he did 60K.
Wow.
And I didn't, I just wanted, he knew that, I was like thinking like, yeah, I know what your comment is, but he like never said anything about it. And he ended up quitting.
No kidding.
Yeah, he ended up quitting. And then there was another guy, which was like I consider him a smart kid in a dumb class, because he was like put on this pedestal that he was this greatest sales rep, and, he got all the good leads and all that stuff. And I'm like, I can sell better than he can. Yeah. They just don't know it yet. Yeah. And and then I eventually proved myself, and then I passed that guy. My first full year I was there, I think I got second. I started in July, and I got second for Salesman of the Year. My first full year, I got Salesman of the Year, which I think I had $630,000 in revenue. It was a much smaller company than it is now. Yeah. And then I worked there for 7.5 years, and I got Salesman of the Year for 7 years. So 7 years in a row, I got Salesman of the Year. And I was just looking at the little trophy things that I had. The first year I won, it was $636,000 in revenue. The last year was $1.87 million net revenue. So like 3 times the thing. So that's kind of the story of how I got into sales. I was, gifted in sales. Sure. I still consider myself salesman.
I think
first.
You put in the hard work though too, right? In order to go to a home that you don't think you have a chance in closing, and to actually close it, I think.
Right. So in all of that, right? So I was like the beginning and the end of like sales and home improvements, but I was, getting to Leap, right? Yeah. So we're on here. It's Leap's podcast. So to talk about how Leap came about, early on, right out of the gate when I came out of training, I had this briefcase. So it looks like I'm moving into people's house, because I had like a window, like a small window, demo window.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate that are
yes.
That are
If you're listening, you're doing in-home sales, they're nodding their heads yes right now.
Right.
I had the window. I had the suitcase thing that had all the parts to the window to show how it was made and constructed. And then I had my briefcase, that was big. Sometimes I had to make 2 trips to get into the house. And then if I was pitching multi-products, that's a whole other story. I mean, I had their whole kitchen and dining room covered with things. So I go into I come out of training, and I have my briefcase that has, I remember, had three ring binders, which was, one had my price guide in it that had windows, roofing, siding, doors, etc., just a bunch of little sleeves that had all different pricing. I had another one that was the pitch book, which was like a brag book about the company and why they should buy from me, and had all of my company story and all that stuff in it. And then I had another one which was basically a bunch of dividers that had all the paperwork that I needed. So it had all my measure sheets for all the different products. It had all the contracts for each product. And then it had like addendums and credit applications and stuff like that in it. And then, of course, I had all the brochures, right? If you pulled all the brochures out there, about 1.5 inches thick of brochures, because I had multiple copies of every brochure, because I would run leads, multiple times a day, and I wouldn't always get back to the office every day. So going back to like my high school, what I learned in high school, I remember I took a class on Excel, and I was like, man, I could take all the math that I'm doing to calculate a price, and I could put it in an Excel spreadsheet. So that's what I've done. I took everything that was in my price guide, put it in an Excel spreadsheet. That way I could just type in my measurements. So I had a measure sheet that I would fill out with paper on a clipboard, and then I would take the measurements from that, and my Excel spreadsheet basically mirrored those measurements.
Right.
So I just type in my numbers, and then it would spit out the price for the different products.
Now, how long ago was this?
This was in 2000. This was probably 2010.
2010. And believe it or not, I still talk to contractors that still run off of an Excel spreadsheet.
I've seen some crazy spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So, through the years, signing customers up, and they say, hey, this is what we use now. And they show me some of the spreadsheets that blow mine out of the water. And I thought mine was pretty advanced.
But it's amazing how I'm sure you're going to talk about it more, about how you transitioned from, the paper versions to the Excel version to kind of where Leap is.
Correct.
So what's that? How'd that transformation take place?
Yeah. So I built this Excel spreadsheet that I used for about 1.5 years, and the iPad 2 had came out. I remember my sister-in-law had purchased the very first iPad, and I was like, oh, that thing's neat. But I think I had a Palm Pre at the time. It was like this clamshell slide phone. It was like the latest and greatest. And the iPad 2 came out, and it was the first one with the camera. And I was like, oh, man, that thing's neat. I'm going to go buy one of those. So I did. I went and bought one. And my intention initially was to use it for work. So I was like, hey, I could do my pricing on there, math, put my spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, Microsoft Office didn't exist on an iPad back then. And I didn't put two and two together. So I basically had let's say it was $1,000 at the time. I had a $1,000 tablet that I could play Angry Birds.
Yeah, right. Angry Birds,
that's all it really did. I remember there wasn't much. I could check my email, I could play Angry Birds. That was about it.
I think after I bought my first one, it sat around like a paperweight for 6 months or so. It's like, it was really exciting, but it didn't have the functionality that I needed it to.
Yeah. All the apps and stuff just weren't there. So I found myself as like a big iPhone. But at the time, I didn't have an iPhone either. Yeah. So after I bought the iPad, I bought an iPhone, and the two were like syncing. That made it a lot nicer because, like the text message and stuff would come over. And then I bought a Mac laptop. And that was like my introduction to Apple. So now I had the phone, the iPad, and the laptop.
You're stuck in the ecosystem.
And I've been stuck ever since.
Yeah.
So that's when, in home improvement sales, it's very seasonal.
Yeah.
So in the wintertime, it got very slow. And there were times where I wouldn't run a lead for a week, 2 weeks, So I had a lot of downtime, and my wife was at work, kids were at school, whatever. So I would be sitting at home looking for something to do. It's cold outside. I don't want to go outside. So I went back to my computer days in high school, and I was like, I want to take that to the next step. I learned how to make a website, but I would love to learn how to make an app. And I remember on the iPad, I was looking, just looking through, and I seen the iBooks app. So I went into iBooks on the iPad and just searched for computer programming books. And then a bunch popped up, and I did a little bit of research of what to look for to program on the iPad and the phone.
Sure.
And I found this book had pretty high ratings. It was only $7, and I bought it. And it was Introduction to Objective-C Programming. So I was like, all right, let's give this thing a shot. At this time, I know nothing about computer programming. Yeah. I've done a little bit of HTML, and that was just a drag and drop kind of editor. I knew how the HTML tags worked, but I didn't know with the naming. I couldn't build a website from scratch.
Yeah. My extent with HTML was back when MySpace would let you do whatever you wanted in there. I had this completely custom MySpace account.
I did it. Yeah, well, I did it on it was Angel Fire.
Oh yeah,
which was before MySpace.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
that was my first foray.
Yeah, and I was always copy and pasting the code that went in it. But I would not consider myself a programmer at all.
Sure.
I could do Excel. Yeah. I understood it, enough. But anyway, I started reading this book. And I remember in the book, I actually owe a lot of credit to this book. I'd like to meet the author one day, actually. But I owe a lot of credit to it because I remember in the beginning of the book, he said, if you're reading this, you pretty much have no knowledge of it. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. No knowledge of programming. And there's going to be a lot of things in this book which just make no sense to you. And he says, just stick with it. And as you get to the end of the book, you're going to have a lot of aha moments. Like, oh, I get it, and you connect the dots, go back and read that chapter, whatever. So I stuck with it. And I worked my way all the way through the book. And that first book, you actually don't build an app. It just teaches you the basics of, you type in some text into if you think of the Matrix, where it's like all the ones and zeros.
Right.
And it's a little bit above that, but it's a terminal is what they call it. Sure. You type in text and it spits out different text. So that's all it did. And then that same author had a follow-up book to that one, which was Introduction to Visual Programming in Objective-C, which then showed you how to use all the buttons and the switches and wire all the code to the text fields, the buttons, sure. the switches, the sliders, all that stuff. So I went through that book, and it was at the end of that book, you end up building a small app. I think it was like a body mass index calculator app, yep. and you build that. And then I was like, okay. At the end of that book, it says, go out and build an app that you would use yourself, and that's the best way you're going to learn. All the basics now. Right. Go out and build an app that, you would use yourself.
Something that would solve a problem you had.
Yep.
And at this time, your problem, I'm assuming, was...
Well, the spreadsheet kinda, okay. But I was still using my spreadsheet, so I didn't really. That was working for me. So initially, I had started on a gas app, which was an app that I could type in my mileage, and every time I filled up gas, how many gallons and how much it was, and it would tell me. But then I went on the App Store, and there's 100 of them that do the exact same thing better than what I could do. Yeah. So then it just naturally came that, hey, I'm going to replace the functionality of my spreadsheet on an iPad app. And, I threw something together very quick. It took me a week, and I had the basic math, the app doing the math. It's nothing like it is today. Sure. And I was using it. And I remember taking it into the office and showing all the other reps. And I had respect because I was the top sales rep, and they seen, what I could do sales-wise. But then I would show them this app, and I would love to dig it up. But if you go back and look at it, it was trash. I thought the thing was glorious. I thought I'd discovered fire when I was showing it to them.
But I think the point behind that, though, is that it really solved a problem that you and the other sales reps had with the way that you used to sell.
Right. So, but what happened is, when I made that first prototype and was able to use it in a house, my mind, I seen what Leap can be. Sure. And it wasn't even Leap at the time. Right. I just seen what this app could be.
Estimate or something?
So it was called Nothing at the time. Okay. It was like Steve's app is what everybody called it. But there was a sales rep that I worked with, and he came in one morning and said, hey, I have a great name for that app. I was like, okay, hit me. And he said, estimate. He's like, but a play on the word mate, because it's by your side all the time. I was like, oh, I like it. And it's an estimate, whatever. Yeah. So that's what I named it for the longest time. It was called Estimate. But then when we made it a company, we didn't want to be tied to just an estimator. Because by that time, when we made it a company, it did so much more than just an estimator, which I'll go through how we came up with the name, in a minute. But anyway, we were. I was using this app, and I was running leads while using this app, and I was making all the mistakes that sales reps make. So I would go in, and I remember at the end of my lead, we're supposed to go in and update our lead results into the CRM. I would forget, it was just out of sight, out of mind. I was done my appointment. I was driving on the way home.
That doesn't make you money. It makes you money being in home selling, right?
Exactly. And I would forget. So it got so bad that the company started putting a $50 fee on reps that didn't do it, because they had, in order to get their job done, in the office the next morning, all the reps had to update their lead results. Right. And reps weren't updating the results, and they didn't know what happened to the lead, blah, blah, blah. They started putting a $50 fee on it, and it took one of those fees for me. I was ticked. Yeah. And I'm like, that's never going to happen to me again. I'm always going to remember to update my lead results. So I put a little notification in the app that says, okay, if you open the app, start an appointment, and then close it, you have X time where the thing starts alerting you to say, hey, you need to update your lead result. Yeah. Which is in the app today. That is a thing.
It's a valuable feature too.
Yeah. But I would make mistakes. I'll give you a good example. I still remember this lead I ran where it was a townhouse, and they had a homeowners association that required beige windows on the front of the house. The windows that I sold two different kinds, and my top of the line ones were the only ones that came in beige. The customer had also a little sunroom, it was a screen and porch turned into a sunroom on the back. So they wanted a price on windows on the whole house, front and back, as well as the sunroom. It came down to it where the customer wanted a price on the top of the line on the front because they needed the beige. They wanted the white top of the line on the back because they didn't want to pay for the beige upgrade, on the back of the house. It was a townhouse, so it didn't matter. And then they wanted the cheap windows in the sunroom. So because they didn't, wasn't heated and air conditioned, all that stuff, they didn't care. So I found myself, I had to go back to paper. I was like, in order to price that up, I have never considered in any of my spreadsheet or the app that I was using at the time to price up windows with 3 different kinds or series of windows. So I had a little notepad on my iPad, a little notes app, and I put on there, that specific scenario, and it says I need to figure out a way to be able to price that up super quick, because when I'm sitting across the table from Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I want to be able to have all of my time focused on closing the deal. I don't want to have to take time pricing it up and reworking numbers and calculating financing and doing all that stuff, filling out paperwork. Because I remember there are times where you're like, okay, well, that specific example, if I were to say, hey, Mrs. and Mrs. Jones, give me a minute to work that up, right? And I have to go back to my calculator, my price book, and math. Even if it takes 2 minutes to do that, that's 2 minutes that Mr. and Mrs. Jones can go start dinner.
Yeah, you're going to lose their attention.
Yeah, give the kids a bath, whatever it's going to be. And then my chances of closing a deal when one of the parties leaves the table plummet.
Right.
So I always wanted to keep them engaged and only have a finite amount of time to keep them engaged. So by using technology, I was able to just quickly calculate those prices. And anything where I found an inefficiency in the 7 years that I was running leads, I made my app make that more efficient. Yeah. So as I was programming that, I realized, hey, this programming can do so much more than Excel.
Yeah.
So I can have it generate PDFs. I can have it connect to APIs where I can push into different CRMs. I can push data to lenders, and that's really what I started to do. And then kind of like to bring the whole thing together, like how we got here today. I actually got it to a point where the whole company adopted it. Every sales rep in that company, there was about 30 to 40 at this time, sales reps that were using it. It was polished. We worked out all the kinks. It was scaling with the company. And reps who were using it started to contact me when they would go work for somebody else. They said, hey, I was using that app over at New Look. Yeah. I'm now working for this company, and I have to go back to the...
I don't want to go back to paper.
Yeah, I'm going back to the Stone Age. And I remember telling them, I was like, hey, I can't make it work for your company. It only works for this company. I'm running leads. This thing is kind of polished. I don't want to spend any more time on it with another company, blah, blah, blah. And after about the 4th or 5th time, there's a company that, was very persistent and said, hey, I like to really use this thing. And they seem like a good candidate, good people to work for. And I said, okay, I'm going to make this work for you guys. And I went back to the owners of New Look and I said, hey, man, I'm going to give this thing a shot and see what happens. I think this thing can be big because this company that I was selling it to, the owner of the company actually sat on the board of the Maryland Home Improvement Commission.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if he don't have a solution for all these problems that I have solved, then nobody has a solution for all these problems I solved, because this guy interacts with contractors every day. He sits at the board of a state, level agency. So he was very interested in the app, and, we signed him up. I made it work for him. It was super successful. They're a customer to this day. So then that's when I realized, hey, when we went to market, like when we said, okay, this is going to be a business, and we went to market, we already had, it wasn't just an idea. It was already a product that was already proven to work. It had already scaled with another company. A lot of software companies like, hey, I have this idea. I got to go raise money, and we're going to build it, and then we got to get a pilot.
And then you got to get product market fit and go through all that.
Exactly.
But you found it. This came because of the problems you were experiencing.
Exactly. Yeah, when Leap became a business, the product was 7 years old.
Right.
So
I think a lot of people don't know that. they hear Leap and they say, oh yeah, I just heard about them a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever it may be, and they don't realize how much went into it and how long it's actually been.
Right. So it's we're a little over 10 years now, I think. A total, like the software is 10 years old. It's been polished for that long. Yeah. So we took this thing to market, and it was so cool. Where like an app that I initially created in my bedroom, as a hobby, and then here I had multi-millions of dollars being pushed through this thing. Reps depending on it. I mean, they're making a ton of money off of it. It's making their lives easier. One of the best compliments I got was we were doing a testimonial from a customer of ours, and he says, he's like, man, Leap is the greatest thing to happen to our company. He's like, as a matter of fact, he's like, it's not just about the company. He's like, Leap finally gave me my weekends back. Yeah. He's like, before I was in it, working in the business all the time, and just doing this and doing that, just trying to stay afloat. He's like, and on the weekends, I was doing all the other stuff that I couldn't do during the week when I had downtime.
Sure.
And he says Leap was able to give me my weekends back because all the other stuff was just automated and pushed where it needed to go. I didn't have to do all that stuff, man. Yeah. It was a great compliment. So I'm like, man, that affected somebody's life. Like this app affected somebody's life. It wasn't just about the business. Yeah. So it was really cool. And it was kind of like overwhelming at first when we took it to market because we had so many people that was, hey, this is exactly what so many times I've been told that if I was to build an app for my business, this would be it.
Yeah.
Which
kind of compliment.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it makes sense because this app was built from the inside out.
Sure.
Like always, one of the sales things I used to do when I was pitching this thing, like when I was actually selling it, is this app, most software is built from what I call the outside in. Like a lot of the good softwares out there is built by manufacturers, which is, the manufacturers are very far removed from the kitchen table.
Right.
Like the sales rep sitting at the kitchen table. And most of the time manufacturers interact with either distributors or purchasing agents, right? So they don't interact with the actual sales rep that's sitting at the kitchen table. Maybe the sales manager, and that's as deep as they go.
I think it's a good point. There are many layers removed from
Correct.
the actual interaction that happens at the kitchen table.
So like they're good apps. Like I remember Provia built a door app, and I remember when that thing came out, I was like, oh man, this thing is great. But it doesn't do my roofing, it doesn't do my siding, it doesn't do the contract, it doesn't do financing, it doesn't do a bunch of stuff. It does their products very, very well, but I can't do the rest of my sales process. So I still have to have, now I have two processes, one to sell a door and one to sell everything else.
Yeah.
So now you have to train to do that. So then it was just like, well, we're just not going to use the other app, so we can only train one process. So Leap was, we tied every step of the sales process into one software and tied it into all the things that are good. So, what makes our app great, it was built from the inside out. The end user built it. And one of the things Patrick always says, a good point, is if you look at the average tenureship of a sales rep in the home improvement industry, it's probably 6 months to a year before they either go work for someone else or look for a different industry or look to get promoted.
Yeah.
So I was able to do it for 7, which, is above average. I was at the top level of it. Right. So, that's hard to do too, to stay in it for that long and at the top. I was also a gifted computer programmer. So I was able to build the app, which kind of removed all of the other things that would go along with building an app, like the focus groups and, hiring developers and hiring agency and all that stuff. So, we ended up with a product that was tailor fit for this industry.
That's great, Steve. So how did you come up with the name Leap?
Yeah. So when we were thinking of names, initially we had the Estimate name, that's what I mentioned earlier. And we were trying to, we knew that this was a big step forward for the industry, right? Our industry is still one of the only ones left untapped with technology. So if you think of any other industry, there's apps for everything. You're going in, you're checking yourself out at the grocery store. You're scanning barcodes. Like everything is digitized.
I think I heard home improvement and agriculture were like the last two untouched.
Yeah. Agriculture. I didn't even think of that one. Yeah. But there's really technology has not been adopted. So we knew that switching people over from what they're doing now, because it's kind of like if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But they don't realize that it's broke. So switching them over to something digital is going to be a big move forward. So we started looking up synonyms for moving forward, like a big change. And the first one, a bunch came up, and the first one that we actually decided on was Propel. I'm like, hey, and we also wanted a name that was short and like that we could it wasn't specific to the industry.
Sure.
Because, we didn't want to be tied to home improvements. Like if we wanted to use it we have people who actually use it out of the home improvement industry.
Right.
But we wanted to just be a generic name that really meant nothing, that we could kind of make it mean, when we say it, that it's the home improvement software or the software. That we have or that we're selling. So we started with Propel, and that first customer that we signed up, I had said to them, they had said to me, hey, did you decide on a name for the app yet? Because I told them, hey, right now it's called Estimate, but we're going to change that. And then when I was signing them, I was like, hey, have you decided on a name? I was like, yeah, I think we're going to go with Propel. And they're like, oh, like the water. And then instantly I was like,
that's the first thing that came into my mind too.
And I was like, no, I guess we can't do that because, now we would have to overcome the whole water thing. And I didn't even think of that. So that was like a good test.
Like a litmus test.
Yeah, right. If that was a good name or not. So then we went back to the drawing board. And then Leap was a good, moving forward, a big jump, a leap forward. And then we thought, hey, that the logo, I could see the logo on it, like maybe like a little swoosh of a frog jumping or, something like that. We ended up with the 3 frogs jumping. And, that's really where it came about. It was just a synonym for moving forward, a big step forward and changing your business process and just the industry as a whole. So going technology, which today I think we're at a point where the industry is ready to shift to digital, because the younger generations come up, the millennials, to say that the new management, the new business owners are taking over the businesses. They're the new sales reps. They're not afraid of technology. They grew up with technology, and we have found these people are coming in and they're looking at all the inefficiencies that the way the company is being ran now, and they're like, we have got to change this and make it better.
I appreciate you giving us kind of that backstory and how Leap got to where it is today. As we wrap up here, I wanted to ask you, you were really successful selling with New Look, and I know you mentioned you're kind of going to give it like a 90 days or 30 days even to see like, is this for you? What advice would you give to new sales reps that are maybe just getting started or considering getting started, to make sure that they can be successful?
Yeah. So the one you had mentioned like that, they call it gap selling, which I call it solution selling. Yeah. So one of the things I think sales reps make the biggest mistake with selling is they know all of the features and functionality of whatever product, whatever widget they're selling. This isn't anything I made up. This is like sales in books and stuff, right? So they understand the product and what is good about the product, but they don't understand how to connect it to the customer's lifestyle. And, when I go into a customer's house and I'm selling a roof, I'm trying to figure out what their hot buttons are, things that they really like, things that they can relate to, shingles that have fell in their yard that they have seen, or, the wife might like the look of the roof, and I find out, hey, and then everything that I'm pitching is about what the customer's interests are and what their likes are and what their lifestyle setting is. So like cell phones, I was always, just talking about, hey, get a hold of the kids and like real life scenarios. I wasn't talking about how, you have the little snake game on there. Like they don't, the kid I'd tell the kid, hey, look, check this thing out. It's this little snake game on there. So I think that's where I've seen a lot of reps who are they're talented and they can sell, but if they were able to connect the product features to the solution for that customer, they would sell a hell of a lot more and for a higher price.
Yeah, that's great advice, and it's applicable across any trade.
Any industry. Yeah. Any industry.
Well, awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate the time today, Steve. This has been really good. Really excited that you came on and shared your story with us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that'll do it for today's show. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of Leaps and Bounds. If you did, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review and subscribe to the podcast. We look forward to bringing you more exclusive conversations with some of the most successful home improvement leaders. If you're interested in learning more about Leap, be sure to check us out at leaptodigital.com or follow one of our social channels. Until next time, see you.